The king, Prince William and Princess Kate, arrives at St.Mary Magdalene Church for Christmas service. A thin layer of frost covered the fields, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the light. The air was crisp, carrying the familiar scent of winter, wood smoke from chimneys, pine from nearby trees, and a faint sweetness of freshly baked pastries from the village bakery. It was Christmas morning, and the village, usually calm and quiet, was alive with a special kind of excitement, a gentle buzz that hinted something extraordinary was about to happen. People started arriving at the narrow lanes leading to St. Mary Magdalene Church well before the service was scheduled to begin. Families, young and old, wrapped in warm coats, scarves, and hats, held the hands of children who were practically bouncing with excitement. Many had traveled from nearby towns, eager to witness the annual Christmas service, but today was unlike any other year. Word had spread quickly that the king himself, along with Prince William and Princess Kate, would be attending. The news had traveled through newspapers, radio, and television, but for those who were standing there in person, it still felt almost unbelievable. It was the kind of moment that seemed too wonderful to be real. Conversations bubbled around the crowd, cheerful voices mixing with laughter, and the sound of children's shoes crunching on frost-covered grass. Some people spoke in whispers, careful not to disturb the solemnity of the occasion, while others couldn't contain their excitement, pointing to the road and imagining the royal cars arriving. Everyone was bundled up against the cold, but the chill in the air could not cool the warmth in their hearts. It was a morning full of hope, joy, and a shared sense of tradition that had endured for generations. Inside the church, the scene was quiet but equally filled with anticipation. Candles flickered softly on the altar, casting a warm, golden glow over the polished wooden pews. Wreaths hung from the walls, carefully arranged with red ribbons and sprigs of holly, and garlands of evergreen adorned the windows, their faint scent mingling with the subtle perfume of flowers placed around the altar. The organist played gentle notes, practicing softly in preparation for the service. Choir members, dressed neatly in robes, whispered among themselves, checking music sheets and rehearsing their cues. The parish priest, dressed in a crisp white robe with golden trim, moved quietly, ensuring that everything was in perfect order for the service. Though everything seemed calm, there was an undercurrent of excitement, a shared awareness that the ordinary Christmas service would today become extraordinary. Outside, the crowd continued to grow. Elderly villagers arrived with walking sticks, leaning slightly on each other for support as they made their way to the church. Teenagers, faces flushed with cold and excitement, stood in small groups, chatting animatedly, taking turns looking down the long stretch of road where the royal motorcade would appear. Families with young children struggled to keep them from running ahead, but the children's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Even the village dogs, leashed and patient, seemed to sense the unusual energy, their tails wagging as they sniffed the frosty air. Some members of the crowd brought small flags, waving them gently as they tried to catch the first glimpse of the royal family. Others carried cameras, careful to capture every possible moment of history, while many more simply stood in quiet expectation, not wanting to miss a single detail. The atmosphere was a delicate mix of festivity and reverence, reflecting both the joy of Christmas and the respect for the presence of the king and his family. Among the attendees, stories of past Christmas services were shared. Older villagers recalled memories of the king visiting years ago, speaking kindly to children, shaking hands with families, and engaging warmly with the community. They spoke of Princess Diana and the traditions she had upheld, connecting past to present, and emphasizing the continuity of family, duty, and celebration. Younger parents explained these stories to their children, pointing to the church and saying, "Someday, you'll tell stories like this too." The sharing of memory and anticipation created a sense of belonging, of being part of something larger than oneself, something timeless and cherished. As the time for the service drew near, the first signs of the royal motorcade could be heard in the distance. The low hum of engines rolled over the village, a subtle but thrilling announcement that the long-awaited moment was approaching. Children pressed their faces against their parents' shoulders to see better, their small hands clutching mittens. Adults straightened, adjusting scarves and coats, trying to appear composed while their hearts raced. Excited murmurs spread through the crowd, a soft wave of human energy that seemed to vibrate with the chill of the morning air. Meanwhile, inside the church, the organist began a soft prelude, filling the sacred space with gentle music. Choir members straightened in their pews, readying themselves for the carols that would soon fill the church with song. Parishioners took their seats, some kneeling briefly in silent prayer, others simply soaking in the quiet beauty of the moment. Children fidgeted slightly, whispering to each other in hushed tones, but their eyes remained bright, alert, and full of wonder. Everyone sensed the importance of what was about to unfold, the mingling of Christmas tradition with the presence of the royal family. Outside, the air grew colder as the morning progressed, but no one moved away. The excitement and shared anticipation warmed the crowd in ways that the thickest coats could not. People began to recognize neighbors and friends, exchanging smiles and brief greetings, all united by the hope of witnessing a historic and joyful event. The energy was palpable, a collective heartbeat that seemed to pulse through the village streets, the kind of energy that made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Finally, the first car of the motorcade appeared around the bend, sleek and black against the winter landscape. Cameras clicked, and voices rose in soft cheers and gasps of excitement. Children waved their little flags with uncontainable enthusiasm, some almost forgetting to stay on the pavement. Adults smiled and nodded politely to each other, sharing the wonder of the moment without needing words. Even the parish priest, peeking from the church doorway, paused for a brief moment to admire the arrival of the royals, aware of the significance for the congregation. The cars moved slowly, giving the crowd a chance to glimpse the figures inside. The king, composed and dignified, sat in the lead car, acknowledging the crowd with a polite nod and a gentle wave. Prince William and Princess Kate followed, their expressions warm and approachable, engaging briefly with those they could see through the windows. Each movement, each gesture, was observed closely by the crowd, and smiles spread widely as people felt the reality of the moment sink in. It was a rare opportunity, an encounter that blurred the line between tradition and the present, between everyday life and the extraordinary. The motorcade approached the church gates, and the cars came to a slow stop. The villagers leaned forward eagerly, their excitement balanced with respect. There was a hush as the royal doors opened, and the king, followed by Prince William and Princess Kate, stepped out gracefully. The cold air greeted them, but they moved with calm composure, acknowledging the crowd with gracious waves and brief, kind words. Children's eyes widened in awe, parents whispered instructions to take photos quietly, and the villagers felt the weight of history and tradition in that simple, fleeting moment. As the royal family began their walk toward the church entrance, the crowd parted respectfully, forming a pathway lined with warmth and admiration. Every step was measured, dignified, and yet approachable. Parishioners and visitors watched in silence, their hearts lifted by the sight of the family they had long admired, now standing before them in real life. It was a moment suspended in time, where the ordinary magic of Christmas met the extraordinary presence of royalty, leaving a memory that would be treasured for years to come. By the time the king, Prince William and Princess Kate entered St. Mary Magdalene Church, the excitement had reached a gentle peak. The villagers remained outside for a few moments, catching their breath and exchanging stories of what they had just seen. Children pointed to the doors and whispered to each other, "There they go." Adults smiled knowingly, appreciating the blend of tradition, ceremony, and the simple joy of witnessing something remarkable. The morning had already become unforgettable, and the rest of the Christmas service promised to carry that same sense of wonder, warmth, and timeless celebration. The motorcade rolled slowly along the frost-covered road, its polished black cars reflecting the soft morning light. Each vehicle carried a piece of history, yet there was a sense of calm elegance about the procession. Villagers lining the roads held their breath as the King, Prince William, and Princess Kate moved closer to the church. The excitement that had been building all morning now reached a gentle, electric energy. People waved small flags, some handmade and others carefully printed, while children's laughter rang through the air. Parents lifted their little ones onto their shoulders to give them a better view, while the elderly stood with quiet pride, their eyes following each movement of the royal cars. The lead car slowed as it approached the church gate. The king, sitting upright with his usual dignity, looked out of the window for the first time. His calm, reassuring presence seemed to comfort the crowd, many of whom had been waiting for hours in the cold. A polite wave from his hand elicited soft cheers and applause. Prince William, sitting in the next car, smiled warmly at the crowd, nodding and raising a hand to greet those who had been waiting so patiently. Princess Kate, elegant in a long coat and scarf, returned the waves with a gentle smile, her presence radiating warmth even against the crisp winter air. The villagers watched in awe as the cars came to a complete stop. Doors opened, and the royal family stepped out gracefully, moving with the measured poise that had been honed over years of public appearances. Each movement seemed carefully considered, yet natural, as if they were walking among old friends rather than hundreds of strangers. The king's steps were deliberate, calm, and dignified, while Prince William and Princess Kate's pace was slightly lighter, giving the impression of approachability and connection. Even in the midst of ceremonial formality, there was a sense of ease, a warmth that reached every person standing along the frost-lined road. As the royals began their walk toward St.Mary Magdalene Church, the crowd's excitement shifted into respectful admiration. People leaned forward slightly, careful not to crowd the pathway, but eager to catch even the smallest detail. The sound of camera shutters clicking punctuated the quiet of the morning, while children pointed excitedly and whispered to their parents. Some villagers quietly recited memories of past Christmas services, comparing this year's arrival to times when the king had visited with past generations of the royal family. There was a feeling of continuity, a connection across time that made the moment more meaningful than mere spectacle. The path to the church was lined with greenery and subtle festive decorations, and the winter sunlight danced off the frost, creating a magical scene that seemed almost painted. Choir members, standing at the church entrance, adjusted their robes and instruments, preparing to sing once the service began. Parishioners waiting outside caught glimpses of the royals up close, noting the gentle smiles exchanged with local families and children. Every gesture was small yet deliberate, an acknowledgement, a nod, a brief conversation. The presence of the royal family was ceremonial, yes, but also deeply human, reminding everyone that behind the titles and history were people who valued community and connection. The king paused briefly to acknowledge the parish priest, offering a warm nod and a few words that were polite but sincere. Prince William and Princess Kate followed his lead, exchanging short greetings with key members of the congregation, including longtime parishioners and village officials. Children, eyes wide with wonder, stepped forward slightly, encouraged by their parents, and received gentle smiles or small waves from the royals. One young boy, holding a tiny homemade card, shyly extended it toward Princess Kate. She leaned slightly to accept it, whispering a soft thank you and placing the card carefully in her bag. Moments like these, simple and unplanned, created memories that the villagers would cherish forever. The sound of the church bells began to chime, announcing that the service would start soon. This familiar signal seemed to add to the sense of occasion, reminding everyone that this was more than just a royal visit. It was a gathering rooted in tradition, community, and the spirit of Christmas. The King, Prince William, and Princess Kate entered the church, their movements graceful, composed, and full of quiet respect. Villagers followed at a distance, some staying outside to watch, others taking their seats inside. Every eye in the church seemed drawn to the front pews, where the royal family now settled, attentive but approachable. Inside the church, the atmosphere shifted. The soft hum of voices and quiet footsteps mixed with the faint scent of candles and evergreen decorations. Choir members straightened, and the organist's fingers hovered over the keys, ready to begin. Parishioners took their seats, some kneeling in silent prayer, others whispering greetings to neighbors, all aware that something special was unfolding. The presence of the royal family added an unspoken layer of significance to the service. It was as if the church itself, its wooden beams and stone walls, had grown aware of the historic moment and responded with reverence. From the front pew, the King, Prince William, and Princess Kate observed the congregation with thoughtful eyes. They listened quietly, nodding occasionally, exchanging subtle smiles with parishioners who met their gaze. The King's expression was calm, dignified, and observant, reflecting his years of experience in public life. Prince William appeared engaged and approachable, his body language relaxed yet respectful. Princess Kate's warm demeanor reached out to those around her, offering reassurance and friendliness in a way that made the formal setting feel welcoming. Each movement, glance, and gesture carried meaning, bridging the gap between tradition and humanity. Outside, the villagers who had remained on the frost-lined path continued to watch, feeling part of the service even without entering the church. They whispered stories to one another, pointing out the expressions of the royal family and sharing quiet laughter at small, charming interactions, like when a child waved enthusiastically and Princess Kate returned the gesture with a bright smile. These moments, though brief, felt personal and significant, reinforcing the sense that this event was about connection as much as ceremony. As the service inside the church began, the sound of the organ filled the room, soft notes echoing through the space. Choir members began singing, their voices blending harmoniously, creating a gentle backdrop for prayers and reflections. The King, Prince William, and Princess Kate listened attentively, their presence adding weight and solemnity to the occasion without overshadowing it. Parishioners glanced at them occasionally, feeling a mixture of awe and familiarity, as if the royals were both figures of history and members of the same community. The service itself flowed smoothly, a careful balance of music, prayer, and reflection. Carols familiar to everyone were sung with heartfelt joy, their melodies enhanced by the presence of the royal family. The King occasionally joined in softly, his voice understated but respectful. Prince William and Princess Kate sang along with the congregation at times, their participation blending naturally with the community. It was not a performance but a shared experience, a moment where hierarchy faded and everyone, royals and villagers alike, became part of the same celebration. Small interactions continued even during the service. The King nodded politely to those he recognized, acknowledging longtime parishioners with gentle smiles. Prince William whispered a brief comment to the choir director, eliciting a quiet laugh that only those nearby could hear. Princess Kate exchanged brief looks and smiles with children, creating a sense of personal connection that went beyond protocol. These tiny gestures, almost invisible to those far away, carried enormous meaning for those who noticed. They reminded everyone that royalty could be gracious without being distant, caring without being intrusive. As the prelude of the service ended and the congregation settled, there was a shared sense of quiet anticipation. Villagers exchanged glances, noting the ease with which the royals blended respect and approachability. Children squirmed slightly in their pews but were reassured by gentle smiles from Princess Kate. Adults whispered softly, sharing their admiration and reflecting on the rare opportunity of witnessing the royal family in such a personal, yet dignified setting. Even the parish priest seemed to radiate a sense of calm satisfaction, pleased by the seamless harmony between ceremony and human warmth. When the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate eventually rose to listen or participate more actively in readings or hymns, the church responded as one. The sound of unified voices, of shared energy and emotion, filled the sacred space. Outside, the frost-lined streets reflected the morning sun, as villagers listened attentively through open windows or stood quietly, holding onto the moments as if they were part of a living story. The magic of the morning, born from anticipation, respect, and communal celebration, had reached its peak. By the time the service reached its midpoint, the villagers, parishioners, and royal family had all settled into a rhythm of shared experience. Every glance, every smile, every gentle gesture contributed to a tapestry of memory that would last long after the morning ended. The presence of the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate had transformed a simple Christmas service into a historical, yet deeply personal occasion, a celebration of faith, tradition, and human connection that would be remembered for years to come. Inside St. Mary Magdalene Church, a quiet sense of reverence filled the air, mingling with the soft fragrance of candles and the faint aroma of pine from the carefully placed garlands. The golden light of morning filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the polished wooden pews. Every corner of the church seemed alive with anticipation, yet calm, as if the building itself understood that this Christmas service would be remembered for years. Parishioners, young and old, settled into their seats, whispering softly to each other, stealing glances at the front pew where the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate were seated. The king's presence was immediately noticeable. He sat upright, his posture commanding but relaxed, embodying a quiet authority that seemed natural rather than imposed. His eyes scanned the room, taking in familiar faces from the village alongside visitors who had traveled from afar. Occasionally, he nodded slightly to someone he recognized, a gesture both simple and dignified. Prince William, seated beside him, exuded warmth and approachability, occasionally leaning toward his wife or the king in quiet conversation, always aware of his surroundings. Princess Kate, graceful and attentive, offered small smiles to parishioners who met her gaze, creating a sense of personal connection that softened the formality of the occasion. The service began with the gentle sounds of the organ, played with practiced precision, filling the church with soft, resonant notes that echoed against the stone walls. Choir members stood at the front, their robes neat and voices blending harmoniously, ready to lead the congregation in familiar carols. The first hymn began, and parishioners joined in, their voices rising together in a warm, joyful sound. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate sang along quietly, their participation understated but genuine. It was a moment where tradition met presence, and even those who had attended many Christmas services before felt a renewed sense of awe and unity. As the music continued, the priest approached the pulpit, his voice calm but commanding attention. He spoke of hope, family, and the meaning of Christmas, weaving together scripture and reflections that resonated with everyone in the church. The congregation listened intently, heads bowed at times, faces lifted at others, and hearts quietly moved by the message. The king, sitting attentively, occasionally nodded, his expression thoughtful, showing a deep engagement with the words being spoken. Prince William and Princess Kate mirrored his focus, their body language open and respectful, creating an atmosphere of shared reflection. Throughout the service, Small, human moments continued to emerge, softening the formality without diminishing the solemnity. A child fidgeted nervously in a pew, and Princess Kate's eyes briefly met his, offering a reassuring smile that seemed to say, "It's okay. You are part of this too." Prince William whispered something to the choir director, causing a quiet laugh that only those nearby could hear. The king's calm presence reassured older parishioners, some of whom had waited decades to witness a royal Christmas service up close. Every gesture, no matter how small, contributed to the sense of warmth and connection that defined this moment. As the choir led the congregation in the next hymn, the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to brighten in response, bathing the church in an almost magical glow. The familiar carols, sung with heartfelt devotion, carried a sense of continuity, connecting the present congregation with generations past. Villagers remembered their parents and grandparents attending similar services, recalling stories of the king's earlier visits. The presence of the royal family made those memories feel alive again, creating a bridge between past and present that enriched the meaning of the morning. The readings from Scripture were delivered with careful attention, their cadence and rhythm capturing the beauty of the words. The king listened intently, his hands resting lightly on his lap, eyes occasionally closing in quiet reflection. Prince William and Princess Kate followed the readings with respectful focus, acknowledging the sacredness of the moment. Parishioners absorbed the words, some mouthing them silently, others simply letting the message settle in their hearts. It was a time of contemplation, a pause from the bustle of everyday life, made even more profound by the presence of the royal family. One particularly memorable moment occurred when a young choir member, standing nervously at the front, began to sing a solo. Her voice, soft at first, grew stronger as she gained confidence, filling the church with a clear, beautiful tone. Princess Kate's encouraging smile and subtle nod seemed to give her courage, while Prince William and the king listened with evident appreciation. The congregation, inspired by both the performance and the royal support, responded with gentle applause, careful not to break the solemnity of the service. It was a small but meaningful exchange of human connection, reminding everyone that kindness and encouragement could transform even the briefest moments into lasting memories. As the service continued, the focus shifted to the themes of giving, compassion, and community. The priest spoke of the importance of helping those in need, sharing blessings with family and neighbors, and finding joy in simple acts of kindness. The king, Prince William and Princess Kate remained attentive, their expressions conveying understanding and empathy. Parishioners nodded in agreement, reflecting silently on how they might embody these ideals in their own lives. The church seemed to hum with a collective awareness of shared values, a gentle yet powerful reminder of the spirit of Christmas. During the quiet moments of prayer, the king bowed his head respectfully, while Prince William and Princess Kate mirrored his posture. The congregation followed suit, creating a unified sense of devotion and reflection. In these silent pauses, there was a feeling of timelessness, as if the walls of St.Mary Magdalene held the stories of countless Christmases past, now joined with the present in a seamless continuation of tradition. The presence of the royal family elevated the experience, not as a spectacle, but as part of the communal reflection and spiritual connection. The service included familiar carols that invited participation from the congregation. The sound of voices, young and old, blending together created a warmth that spread throughout the church. Children's voices, bright and clear, harmonized with the deeper tones of older parishioners, while the king and Prince William's quiet contributions lent a subtle authority and reassurance to the music. Princess Kate's soft but confident voice added an elegance to the moment, her participation inspiring both respect and admiration. Together, the royals and congregation became part of a living, breathing celebration of music, faith, and community. Small interactions continued throughout the service, unnoticed by some but meaningful to those involved. The king's eyes met those of an elderly parishioner who had been attending the service for decades, sharing a brief but warm nod that conveyed recognition and respect. Prince William gently adjusted his seat to allow a child to sit comfortably nearby, and Princess Kate whispered a kind word to a nervous young attendee. These seemingly ordinary gestures were amplified by the context, reinforcing the humanity and approachability of the royal family, and reminding everyone that true leadership often lies in attention, care, and presence. As the service approached its conclusion, the choir led the congregation in one final carol, a song of joy, peace, and hope. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate sang along, their voices harmonizing subtly with those around them. The sunlight outside had shifted slightly, creating a golden glow that streamed through the stained glass, illuminating the church in soft, warm light. Parishioners, feeling the culmination of the service, joined in wholeheartedly, voices strong and unified, hearts full of gratitude and celebration. The combination of music, sacred reflection, and the presence of the royal family created a moment that felt suspended in time, both ordinary in its familiarity and extraordinary in its significance. When the final notes of the carol faded, the priest offered a closing blessing. Heads were bowed, hands joined, and a hush settled over the congregation. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate remained respectful, their presence lending weight and solemnity to the conclusion of the service. Parishioners quietly rose, exchanging polite nods and smiles, fully aware that they had witnessed something special, a Christmas service that combined faith, tradition, and the warmth of human connection in a way that would be remembered for generations. As the congregation began to prepare for the departure, the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate remained seated for a moment, acknowledging the shared experience with those around them. Their eyes met the faces of parishioners, offering quiet appreciation and connection. Children whispered excitedly to their parents about the smiles and small gestures they had observed, while adults reflected on the dignity and warmth of the royal presence. The service had been more than a ceremony. It had been a living testament to the values of community, kindness, and the joy of Christmas. By the time the service ended, the church was filled with a gentle energy, a mixture of gratitude, reverence, and happiness. The royal family rose gracefully, preparing to leave, their presence having left a lasting impression on every person in attendance. Parishioners quietly gathered their belongings, sharing stories of their favorite moments, while outside, villagers who had remained on the frost-lined streets awaited the royal family's departure with eager anticipation. The morning had been magical, blending tradition with humanity, ceremony with warmth, and faith with shared joy. As the service concluded, a soft sense of awe lingered in the air, blending with the crisp winter sunlight that filtered through the church windows. Parishioners rose slowly from their pews, exchanging polite smiles and nods with neighbors, while the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate remained seated for a moment, allowing the congregation to settle and the calm of the church to be savored one last time. The service had been more than a ceremonial gathering. It had been a shared experience of faith, tradition, and warmth, now lingering in the minds and hearts of everyone present. Outside, the frost-covered grounds of St.Mary Magdalene glimmered under the bright morning sun. Villagers who had waited along the roads and pathways now pressed forward gently, eager for a closer look at the royal family, yet careful not to crowd or rush them. Children's faces shone with excitement, small flags waving as they tried to anticipate the movements of the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate. Parents held their children close, whispering instructions to be polite and patient, but unable to hide the quiet joy in their own expressions. Even the village dogs, leashed and well-behaved, seemed to sense the importance of the moment, tails wagging in rhythm with the subtle energy of the crowd. The king stepped out of the church first, his posture calm and dignified, yet approachable. He offered gentle nods to parishioners and village officials, acknowledging them with warmth rather than formality. Prince William followed closely, carrying an air of relaxed attentiveness, scanning the crowd with a mix of curiosity and care. Princess Kate walked beside him, graceful yet warm, her eyes meeting the faces of children and adults alike, offering small smiles and brief words of encouragement. Each step forward was measured, respectful, and inviting, demonstrating a balance between ceremony and personal connection. Villagers reacted with quiet excitement, some waving flags, others holding small gifts or notes to present to the royal family. One elderly woman, leaning slightly on her cane, raised her hand politely to greet the king. He paused for a moment, offering her a warm nod and a gentle smile that seemed to convey recognition, appreciation, and respect all at once. Nearby, a young boy held out a small drawing he had made for Princess Kate. She leaned slightly, accepting the drawing with a soft "thank you," her expression filled with genuine delight. The boy's eyes widened, and he looked to his parents with pride, his heart racing with the joy of being noticed by someone so admired. As the royal family moved further from the church entrance, a line of parishioners and villagers formed naturally, creating a pathway for personal interactions. Prince William paused to shake hands with a local teacher who had helped organize a small Christmas play for the children. He spoke briefly, asking about the performance, and listened attentively to the teacher's answer, nodding with encouragement. Princess Kate, meanwhile, crouched slightly to speak with a group of children, asking about their favorite Christmas traditions and listening patiently as they excitedly shared their answers. The king observed quietly, offering polite words to those approaching him, his calm demeanor radiating reassurance and familiarity. Photographers and journalists, positioned at respectful distances, captured these interactions, but they were careful not to interfere with the personal moments unfolding. The crowd, meanwhile, watched quietly, savoring the opportunity to witness a rare combination of dignity and humanity. It was clear that these interactions were not staged for the cameras. They were genuine, simple gestures that spoke volumes about the character and presence of the royal family. Each small smile, nod, or wave seemed amplified by the context, leaving lasting impressions on those fortunate enough to be present. A group of villagers brought a small basket of homemade treats, hoping to offer a gesture of appreciation. Princess Kate accepted it gracefully, thanking the contributors with warmth that made the gift feel truly meaningful. Prince William expressed admiration for the effort and creativity that went into preparing the treats, and the king acknowledged the thoughtfulness with a polite nod and a quiet word of thanks. These small exchanges, seemingly ordinary, created a sense of mutual respect and connection, bridging the gap between the royal family and the people they had come to honor. Local families shared quiet stories with one another, pointing out moments they had observed. The way Princess Kate had crouched to speak with the children, the gentle nods of the king, the attentive listening of Prince William. Children, still buzzing with excitement, replayed the gestures and smiles in their minds, comparing notes with friends and siblings. Adults reflected on the balance of tradition and warmth that had defined the morning, recognizing that the royals' presence had enhanced the meaning of Christmas for everyone involved. One particularly touching moment occurred when a young girl, holding a carefully wrapped gift, stepped forward with her mother. She shyly offered the gift to Princess Kate, who knelt slightly to accept it. "Thank you so much," she said softly, her tone kind and genuine. The girl's face lit up with surprise and pride, and she turned to her mother with a bright, joyful expression. Prince William watched nearby, smiling quietly at the interaction, while the king acknowledged the moment with a subtle, approving nod. It was an encounter that seemed to encapsulate the spirit of the morning, a blend of respect, generosity, and human connection. As the royal family continued to move through the crowd, they paused occasionally to engage in brief conversations with parishioners. The king spoke with longtime members of the congregation, asking about their families and health, demonstrating an awareness and care that went beyond ceremonial obligation. Prince William chatted with local volunteers, thanking them for their dedication to the church and the community, and listening with interest to their stories. Princess Kate offered gentle words of encouragement to mothers and children, praising their efforts in school projects or community events. Each pause, each conversation was brief but meaningful, leaving a lasting impression on those involved. The atmosphere around the church was one of warmth, despite the cold winter air. People laughed softly, exchanged stories, and watched the royal family with admiration. Even in these informal moments, there was a sense of respect and decorum, as villagers instinctively understood the balance between excitement and propriety. The interactions felt natural, spontaneous, and sincere, enhancing the sense of community and shared experience that had begun inside the church and now continued outside. Photographers documented the event, but their presence seemed secondary to the genuine human connections unfolding. They captured images of smiles, waves, and small gestures, but the true story was found in the subtle moments. The king nodding to an elderly parishioner, Princess Kate crouching to converse with a child, Prince William listening intently to a local volunteer. These moments, unposed and unscripted, reflected the humanity and grace of the royal family, creating memories that would be recounted in the village for years to come. A small group of musicians, inspired by the earlier service, began to play familiar carols outside the church. Children's laughter mixed with the music, creating a lively, joyful atmosphere. Princess Kate paused to listen, clapping lightly along with the rhythm, while Prince William smiled and encouraged the musicians with a gentle nod. The king, standing nearby, seemed pleased by the spontaneous display, his calm demeanor reflecting quiet approval. For a moment, the churchyard felt like a small stage where tradition, music, and community blended seamlessly. As the interactions drew to a close, the king, Prince William, and Princess Kate prepared to depart. They took a few moments to wave to the gathered crowd, acknowledging everyone with warmth and respect. Children waved their flags vigorously, adults offered polite bows or nods, and the entire village seemed to hum with a quiet sense of fulfillment. The royal family's presence had elevated an ordinary Christmas gathering into a celebration that was deeply personal, historically significant, and filled with shared joy. Even after the royals departed, the energy lingered. Villagers continued to talk about the moments they had witnessed, the smiles, the gentle gestures, the small acts of kindness. Children excitedly described their interactions, and adults reflected on the significance of a royal visit that had been as much about humanity as it was about ceremony. The community had shared something extraordinary, a memory that would connect generations and inspire future celebrations. As the morning sun climbed higher, the village returned to a quiet rhythm. Frost sparkled on the grass, the church bells rang softly in the distance, and families returned to their homes, hearts warmed by the experiences of the day. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate had brought more than tradition and ceremony. They had brought presence, attention, and connection. Their interactions with the villagers had reminded everyone of the importance of kindness, humility, and genuine engagement, leaving an imprint that would last far beyond the Christmas morning itself. As the morning began to move toward midday, a soft calm settled over the village of Sandringham. The excitement of the royal visit had begun to ebb, but the memory of it lingered in every heart. Parishioners and villagers lingered outside the church, reluctant to leave the warm glow of shared experience. The frost on the grass sparkled in the sunlight, catching the eyes of children who still waved small flags and whispered to their parents about the royal family. Inside St. Mary Magdalene, the echoes of the carols and prayers still seemed to resonate, filling the air with a quiet sense of fulfillment and peace. The king, Prince William and Princess Kate were preparing to depart. Their presence, though calm and dignified, had left a visible mark on the community. The king's measured steps reflected his centuries of tradition, but there was a warmth in his eyes, an awareness of the joy and significance of this day for the villagers. Prince William moved with ease beside his father, his expressions open and friendly, creating an approachable presence that contrasted beautifully with the formality of his position. Princess Kate, radiant and composed, walked gracefully, acknowledging the people with small waves and gentle smiles. Together, they formed a harmonious trio, combining dignity, warmth, and humanity in every movement. As the family made their way toward the awaiting cars, villagers lined the pathway with quiet respect. Some held up small cards or notes they had prepared for the royal family, others simply raised their hands in greeting. Children pressed forward slightly, encouraged by parents, hoping for one final wave or smile. The king acknowledged them all with gracious nods. Prince William bent slightly to return a child's enthusiastic wave, and Princess Kate leaned down to accept one last handmade card from a shy young girl. Each gesture, though small, carried the weight of genuine connection and kindness, leaving lasting impressions on the villagers. Photographers captured these final moments, but their presence seemed secondary to the genuine human interaction unfolding. Villagers whispered to one another, recounting the small details. The way Princess Kate had crouched to speak with a child, the king's careful acknowledgement of elderly parishioners, Prince William's attentive listening to volunteers. These seemingly ordinary actions, magnified by the context, had become extraordinary memories for those who witnessed them. The royal family had managed to blend tradition, ceremony, and warmth in a way that felt personal, intimate, and profoundly meaningful. As the king stepped into the lead car, he paused briefly to look back at the gathered crowd. His gaze swept over the villagers, parishioners, and children, a silent gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude. Prince William and Princess Kate followed, offering final smiles and waves, ensuring that everyone felt seen and appreciated. The doors closed gently, and the motorcade began its slow, dignified departure. The engines hummed softly, a quiet soundtrack to the collective reflection of the morning. Villagers watched in respectful silence, reluctant to break the spell of the moment, yet feeling a deep sense of joy and gratitude. As the cars moved away from St. Mary Magdalene, the crowd began to disperse slowly, sharing their experiences with friends, family, and neighbors. Children chattered excitedly about the smiles and waves, the small gestures of kindness, and the overall feeling of wonder they had felt. Adults reflected on the calm dignity of the king, the warmth of Prince William, and the approachability of Princess Kate. Conversations lingered on the shared experience, connecting neighbors who had only exchanged polite greetings before and strengthening the sense of community that Christmas always fostered. The parish priest stepped outside, observing the departing motorcade with a quiet smile. He had witnessed countless Christmas services over the years, but this one felt different, special in a way that went beyond ceremony. The presence of the royal family had transformed an ordinary service into a profound communal experience, blending faith, tradition, and humanity in a way that would resonate long after the morning ended. The priest's voice carried softly as he thanked the remaining congregation for their participation, reminding them that the spirit of Christmas lived not only in grand gestures, but in simple acts of kindness, connection, and shared joy. Nearby, elderly parishioners lingered, speaking softly to one another about the moments they had witnessed. One woman, her hands clasped tightly around her cane, recounted how the king had nodded to her, a gesture that seemed small but had filled her with pride and warmth. Others shared stories of Prince William's attentive listening to volunteers, Princess Kate's kind words to children, and the overall sense of calm and respect that had defined the morning. These recollections were exchanged with quiet laughter, gentle smiles, and a shared feeling of being part of something larger than themselves. Families slowly made their way home, the warmth of the service and the royal visit still glowing in their hearts. Children skipped alongside their parents, waving their small flags one last time, asking questions about the royal family, and excitedly recounting every smile, wave, and gesture. Adults reflected on the meaning of Christmas, considering how the morning had combined tradition, faith, and human connection in a way that felt authentic and inspiring. Conversations flowed easily, memories being formed with each retelling, creating stories that would be shared for years to come. The village streets returned to a quiet rhythm as the royal motorcade disappeared in the distance. Frost glimmered on the rooftops and grass, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the soft sunlight. The church bells rang intermittently, signaling the passing of time, but the atmosphere retained the magic of the morning. Parishioners and villagers alike felt a lingering warmth, a sense of shared joy and connection that extended beyond the walls of the church. It was a day that had bridged tradition and personal interaction, ceremony and humanity, leaving an imprint on the collective memory of the community. In homes throughout the village, the stories of the morning were retold again and again. Children placed small drawings and handmade cards on mantels or pinned them to walls, remembering the moments they had shared with Princess Kate or the smiles they had caught from Prince William. Parents spoke quietly to their children about the king's calm dignity, the attentiveness of the royal family, and the importance of kindness and generosity. These conversations reinforced values that Christmas had always represented, amplified now by the living example of the royal family engaging personally with the community. Meanwhile, the king, Prince William and Princess Kate continued their journey back to their residence. Inside their car, there was a quiet conversation about the morning's events, reflections on the meaningful interactions, and gratitude for the opportunity to connect with the community. The king spoke softly about the importance of observing traditions while remaining connected to people, emphasizing that such moments of personal engagement created lasting memories far beyond the ceremony itself. Prince William and Princess Kate exchanged thoughts on the children they had met, the volunteers they had spoken to, and the genuine warmth they had experienced from the villagers. Though brief, the journey was filled with reflection and a shared sense of fulfillment. Back in Sandringham, the villagers slowly resumed their day-to-day activities, but the memory of the morning remained vivid. Shops opened, the bakery continued to fill the air with the scent of fresh pastries, and children played outside, retelling stories to each other in bursts of excitement. Adults exchanged knowing smiles, understanding that the day had been special not because of spectacle alone, but because of the warmth, humility, and humanity that had been shared. Conversations continued in local homes, over tea, and along village paths, with each retelling adding depth to the collective memory. Even as the day drew to a close, the sense of wonder lingered. The visit had reminded the villagers of the importance of community, of small gestures, and of the shared joy that comes from genuine connection. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate had brought tradition, dignity, and warmth into the lives of everyone they met, creating a story that would be passed down, not only for its historical significance, but for the human kindness it had displayed. Families gathered around tables, sharing stories of the morning, reflecting on the shared experiences, and expressing gratitude for being part of something truly memorable. By evening, the church stood quietly, bathed in the soft glow of fading sunlight. Frost still sparkled on the grass outside, a gentle reminder of the morning's magic. Inside, the echoes of carols, prayers, and laughter seemed to linger in the corners, blending with memories of warm smiles and personal connections. The day had been extraordinary in a way that was both simple and profound. A celebration of Christmas, faith, and humanity brought vividly to life by the presence of the royal family. As the village settled into night, the story of the morning was already taking root as part of local history. Children tucked into bed, still whispering about the smiles they had seen, the gestures they had received, and the warmth of the royal family. Adults reflected on the sense of unity, tradition, and shared joy that had permeated every moment. The king, Prince William, and Princess Kate had departed, but the spirit of their visit remained alive, echoing in hearts, homes, and the quiet streets of Sandringham. It was a day of dignity and humanity, of tradition and personal connection, of joy and reflection. The royal family had left not only a memory of their presence but a lesson in kindness, engagement, and shared celebration. The villagers had witnessed more than a ceremonial visit. They had experienced a living example of grace and warmth, one that would remain a cherished part of Sandringham's history for generations to come.